Today we're setting up 3 new shrimp tanks for Caridina, and I'll take you through the cycling process first, and once it's complete we will add some shrimp to the tanks and try to breed them for a few months, so you will see the first 6 months of the tank's life condensed into this video. Sit back, relax and enjoy. Here we have 2 aquariums that we're gonna use for our builds, and you can see that the one on the right is slightly wider. I built these tanks myself so they can perfectly fit into our available space. For the filtration, I want to use UGF boxes made from glass this time. For the smaller tank, I'm gonna use the standard size UGF box, and for the larger tank, I want to try a new version, slightly wider UGF box, just to see how it's gonna work compared to the standard size. Alright, so we got the plates, the UGF box is ready, and here we have our soil in this bucket, and I have an 80 Amazonia here, but this time I already cycled it for 2 months. The next thing I did was fill the UGF boxes with 80 Amazonia soil. I also added a small amount of soil to the bottom of the tanks, and I sprinkled some bacterial powder to help establish a healthy ecosystem. Then I carefully placed the tanks into my shrimp racks. Alright, looking good. Take a look at this UGF box. I really like this design, very sleek, very thin. Now it's time to fill these tanks with water. Let's do it now. It's been almost 2 weeks since we started cycling these tanks. The tank's developing nicely. I'm very happy with the result. There is only one minor issue in one of the tanks. We're gonna get to that in a second, so let me show you the tanks. Okay, let's start with the wider tank over here, and this tank is doing great, doing fantastic. We have some dust algae started to grow on the surface of the glass. I don't think I mentioned that, but I didn't cycle the soil completely. I only cycled for 7 weeks, and the soil is still leaching ammonia for another like 2-3 weeks, and I did it on purpose. I just want a little bit of ammonia in the tank just to find bacteria to establish and cycle to complete it, because we need ammonia basically. And now let's move to the next one. So here we have a slightly issue which I mentioned before, and if you look at the bottom you can see some weird things here, and they are, guess it, mosquito larvae again. So it's happened again. If you follow my channel, you know that about 1 year ago I set another tank at exactly the same place, and I had exactly the same issue. I had mosquito larvae in the tank, and I was a little bit panicked that time. I saw a lot of worms and I was a bit scary about that. They use that floating well over the top of the tank just to lay some eggs, and the eggs now become worms. All of these things here, they have a worm inside. Before I didn't know what to do, and I removed the worms manually. This time I'm not going to bother to do that. I've got a better solution. I'm going to add some fish here, and this is my only fish tank in my shrimp room with some plants. You can see we have plenty of beautiful guppies here in this tank. Take a look at them, guys. They all bred by me, by the way, and I'm very proud of them because some of them are really, really gorgeous. Can I say gorgeous for males? They're really, really handsome, I would say. Guys, take a look at this male. Wow, that's a beautiful one. By the way, I have also some shrimp here in this tank. They like a very passive in this tank because lots of fish, but they're still doing okay here. And they got a nice coloration in this tank. In the main tanks, they didn't look like that. I don't know why. Maybe some different pH, different GH or something. So anyway, guys, let's catch some of the shrimp. Did I say shrimp? Let's choose some of these lucky fish who are gonna eat a lot of worms and put them in that tank. All right, here we have 6 lucky guppies who are gonna eat a lot of worms. Let's put them in this tank. All right, fish, get the worms, get them. Once I put the fish in the tank, they immediately started to pack the bellies with worms. This is the first time these fish have live food, and they absolutely love it. It's so satisfying to watch them munching on worms and cleaning this tank. I can watch this for hours. So guys, apart from this mosquito larva, this tank is doing great. We already have a dust green algae started to grow on the surface of the glass. We have a little bit of ammonia reading, the same as in another tank. So I think in a week or 2 it's going to be ready for shrimp. And now I want to show you my other tank, and this tank is located next to the tank we are currently cycling. And this tank is ready for reset. And I already moved all the yellow galaxy shrimps into this tank. So now what I want to do is to clean this tank, remove this glass partition, and set this tank up with UGF box exactly the same way as we did with this tank. It is the next day, and as you can see the tank is nice and clean. I already made a glass UGF box for this tank. It's very similar to what we have in this tank. So this UGF is slightly taller, a little bit taller, and a little bit shorter. So guys, what I actually did, I added a little piece like that to extend this single plate of UGF, and here I added 2 times more, so it's a double of this size. So this one is slightly longer than this one. So I'm trying to keep about the same amount of soil inside the UGF. I'm just experimenting with the shape and with the size. So let's see which one is gonna work better. And another thing what I did with this UGF, which is worth to mention, is I added strip of glass to the side of this UGF and to the back of this UGF, as you can see. And now I can push this UGF box into the corner without any gaps between the glass and UGF box. I also did exactly the same thing in this tank, so we have no gaps here, and I also did exactly the same thing in this tank, so we have no gap between the back and the UGF. And by the way guys, these guppies did a very good job of cleaning this mosquito larva. I think they consume all of them here. So now I can move them back into the open tank over there. So now we can add some soil inside this UGF, fill this tank with the water and start our cycle. And I'm preparing the soil for this tank inside this UGF, and I did it in advance. It is always a good idea when you set up a new tank, like in my case here, always add an extra UGF box if you have a space for that. You can see at the bottom I have 2 UGF boxes, and then tank over here I have even 3 UGF boxes. So this way, once your cycle completed, you're gonna have an extra UGF box with fully cycled soil. And next time when you're gonna set up your new tank, it's gonna take you only 2-3 weeks to finish your cycle with your fully cycled soil. Today has been 4 weeks exactly since we set these 2 tanks up. And the good news, they both cycled. I measure ammonia today and we have 0 ammonia in both tanks. So let me quickly show you the tanks. So let's start with the bigger tank and take a look inside this tank, guys. We have plenty of algae growing on the walls, and we also have kind of like hair algae, cotton-like algae growing everywhere here in this tank. And this is completely normal for the new setup, and this is the reason why I don't really like to add any plants before the cycle completed. Look at these mosses here, but that's not a big issue because I'm gonna do a massive water change anyway, and I'm gonna try to remove as much of this algae as possible, make this tank nice and tidy before we're adding the shrimp. And as you can see, I have a couple of guppies here. They're here just to add some bioload, just add some ammonia. So I'm gonna move them into the tank before I do the water change. And here we have a test result. As you can see, we have 0 ammonia, 0 nitrate, a little bit of nitrate, and this is the perfect result. This is what I want to see. That means we can add some shrimps here. By the way guys, this is the last tank we set up, and this tank is just over 2 weeks old, and you can see we have a like nasty looking algae growing here. I think it's look like cyanobacteria, and I tried to scrape it from the glass, and you can see some kind of like a dark green film. I think I need to scrape it completely because it's not healthy algae. This is not algae I want to see. So if it's happened, I suggest you to remove it and wait for the healthy algae to grow in your tank. So this is what I want to do in the next water change. And this is the smaller tank at the bottom of the rack with the UGF box. And you can see we also have 2 guppies here just to add some ammonia and bioload into this tank. As you can see inside this tank, we also have a healthy green walls and lots of cotton-like hair algae, which I'm gonna remove in a minute when I do the water change. So now let's clean our tanks, do the massive water change and prepare them for shrimp. Let's do it now. This is next day. It looks much better without hair algae, and before we're adding shrimps, I actually want to improve this tank even more. I want to add an extra sponge filter into our setups, and you guys should know that the sponge filter probably the best filter for the shrimp tank. Hold on, I think UGF the best one. This is the second best one. I think this filter is going to be a little bit too big for our setup, but if we remove one sponge and make it like that, it's going to be a perfect size. But to make it work, we need to block this tubing, so let's do it now. Okay, I fill this hole with melted plastic so it does the job. So now let's put this filter inside the tank. Hey guys, look at this tank now. We have our sponge filter in the corner, and this is what I call a proper breeding setup. So now finally let's add some shrimps here. This is my shrimp wonderland tank, which I featured on my channel about a year ago, and this video has gone viral. I don't know why. It looks like many people like this tank. Well, here's how it looks now after 1 year, and it's still a gorgeous tank with lots of plants. This tank is the home for my beautiful galaxy tiger shrimp, and while the shrimp are doing okay and continue to breed, the breeding has slowed down recently. I've also noticed occasional random shrimp deaths here, which are signs of old shrimp tank syndrome. After 1 year, the soil has lost its buffering strength and the water pH is a little bit high now. So now it's time to reset this tank and move all of these stunning shrimp into our new setup. To speed up the process, I removed the most of the plants to make it easier to find and catch the shrimp, and then I carefully netted the shrimp out of the tank. Take a look at them, guys. They're all here in this jug. So lots of buried shrimps and lots of little babies. I also left quite a lot of babies in this tank as well. Very, very tiny, small one. You can see them on the food. So plenty of them here. I'm just gonna leave them for a couple of weeks for them to grow up a little bit, because I think it's gonna be too stressful for them to move to the new tank. All of these shrimps are ready for the new home, so we can put them in the new tank. Well, let's do it now. Alright, so we have our first shrimp in our new tank, and they are very active and look happy to me. They already started to munch on the fresh biofilm and algae. That's gonna be a lot of food for them. As always, I'm not gonna feed them for a couple of weeks and let them clean this tank. I'm planning to keep this tank at bare bottom, so over the time I'm gonna slowly siphon the soil from the bottom of this tank. You can see I only put a little bit of soil here, so I hope this tank is gonna be successful and the shrimp's gonna breed a lot here. We will find out later in the video. And this is my second tank. It's nice and clean. You can see I have some moss there in the corner on top of the coconut shell. This is hookah moss, and we have a flame moss on top of the UGF. I also added additional sponge filter in the corner, and this tank is absolutely ready for shrimp. And speaking of shrimp, I've got them over here in this little jug. They are my crazy blue shrimp. So now let's put them in our new breeding setup. And now it's time to do an update on our last tank. It's been a while from my last update, and this tank is 2 months old. It's doing fantastic now. You can see we have plenty of healthy algae growing on the surface, and this is how the healthy tank is supposed to be look like, in my opinion. The moss is thriving, you can see, and the bucephalandra is nice and clean. We don't have any algae apart of the nice and healthy algae. That's what we want to see on the glass, this green algae. So absolutely excited by this tank. So now let's add some shrimps here. And here's the tank where I want to select some shrimps for our new setup. This is basically another tank with my galaxy tigers, and I'm crossbreeding them with the fancy tigers. A long story short, I lost all of the fancy tigers males and I ended up with a bunch of females, so I decided to mix them with my galaxy tigers. They look very close. The only difference is that the galaxy tigers are shadow shrimp and the fancy tigers are simple Caridina. So when you mix a fancy tiger with a galaxy tiger, you're gonna get a hybridized shrimp which looks like a fancy tiger. But when hybrids breed with each other, they're gonna give us a mix of fancy tigers and a small percentage of galaxy tigers. So now I'm gonna select all the fancy tigers and separate them into our new tank. And here we have quite a lot of fancy tigers. I didn't expect so many, to be honest, and I absolutely love them. I know guys, they're not pure ones, they're hybridized, but they're full of surprises. So here I have one bird female, few little babies, and a lot of young adults, which is perfect because they're gonna breed very, very soon, hopefully, in this tank. Fingers crossed. So let's put them inside the tank. Hey guys, take a look at this tank now, full of shrimp. I was excited to see the shrimp in the brand new fully cycled tank. They have already started to explore it and they seem quite happy to be here. Just look at them chasing each other. Black fancy tiger are very beautiful shrimp. I've never had them before. Just think about it. All of the shrimps came from only 3 fancy tiger females, and this is one of them on your screen. There are lots of copepods in this tank and plenty of healthy algae growing on the surface. So now I'm gonna let the shrimp settle in this tank and we will check on them again later in a couple of months or so. It's been a long time since we checked on the tanks, so now it's time to do the final update. Let's start with Crazy Blue Tank. Well, there is nothing exciting to write home about, to be honest. The tank looks good, but the shrimp don't thrive here for some reason. They started to breed in the beginning, but now they stopped, and lately I've noticed some random deaths here from time to time. I have no idea why the shrimp are doing so badly here compared to my other setups. For instance, let me show you my other tank next to it. This tank is 1 month younger, and this is my crossbreeding project where I'm mixing my red devil orange eye shrimp with the blue steel females. You can see this tank is thriving. We have tons of babies here and lots of different varieties. That's what you get from mixing Caridina shrimp, lots of interesting surprises. All of the babies here are F1 generation and they don't have orange eyes yet, but we should see some orange eyes in the next generation. I'm very excited about this project. Can you imagine, guys, we only have 5 females in this tank and all of these babies actually came from those females. That's insane. I made this tank exactly the same way with one UGF box, sponge filter, the same AD Amazonia soil inside the UGF box. We're using the same water and the same bacterial powder. It's an identical setup, but why does one tank thrive while the other one fails? I can't answer this question, I'm afraid. Sometimes it happens in Caridina setup and there's not much you can do about it. So the best way to deal with this is just to reset the tank and start it over again. This is what I'm gonna do with this tank. So I took all the shrimp from the tank, and here we have 2 buried females and quite a lot of babies to my surprise, and they're looking good. Very deep blue color. Not all is lost. We still have quite decent breeding colony, and once the baby grow to the adults, we're gonna have quite a lot of shrimp. Now they're gonna go to my cold tank, and once we reset that tank, we're gonna try to breed them again. That's the way to do it. So now let's move on to the next tank. And this is the tank with fancy tiger shrimp, supposed to be. You can see now it's completely different setup with completely different shrimp. We have crystal red shrimp here. Well, this is because something really bad happened with this tank and I had to reset it. Now let me take you back in time and show you what went wrong with this tank and why I did the full reset. So this is my early and the final update on my fancy tiger tank, and this is because this tank is leaking. You can see we have lots of water underneath of the tank and the water dripping through that gap over here. So this is my custom-made tank and it's about 3 years old, and it's second tank which has started to leak. I think it's because the silicone over the time started to degrade and losing the grip. This tank is only made from 4mm glass, so it's not much of surface area for silicone to grip, and I tried to make this silicone line very thin. This is probably my mistake. So from now on in the future, every time I'm going to reset the tank, every year or so, I'm gonna completely reseal it just to be on the safe side. So now guys, let me give you a final update on this tank before I shut it down. The shrimps are doing great here and they recently started to breed a lot. They didn't breed for the first months or months and a half for some reason, but now I can see lots of buried females. If you look closely, you can actually see lots of tiny little babies everywhere in this tank. Most of the babies, they look like their parents, like a black or red fancy tiger shrimp. And exactly as I predicted, we also have some good surprises in this tank. If you look at this baby, for example, you can see it look like a galaxy tiger shrimp, and this one, for example, it look like a King Kong. Because all of the shrimps are hybridized, we can get lots of shadow shrimp from them. Guys, it's like a free shrimp, it's like a free galaxy shrimp or free King Kong shrimp, and you never say no to the free shrimp, right? I've got one female shrimp that somehow got into the UGF box and has been trapped inside since the beginning. Every time I feed my shrimp, she looks out from her glass prison cell trying to find a way out. She hasn't had a proper food for a very long time. There is no way for me to take her out unless I remove the soil and open the box, but don't worry my little shrimp, you'll be free again very soon. Unfortunately, we didn't have much luck with this tank, so now I'm gonna catch all the shrimps, move them into my new setup, then I'm gonna clean this tank, repair it, and then we're gonna start it over again. So hopefully we're gonna be more lucky next time. Okay, now let's let the shrimp free, finally. She's finally free now. Now we can put her together with her brothers and sisters. Alright, the tank is gone and I placed all the shrimps into these jugs. So here I have all the adults and juveniles, and here I have a jug of babies. And look at them guys, they are so tiny. It took me so much time to find them all inside this tank. So now I'm gonna put them in a new tank and hopefully they're gonna do much better there. And now we're back to the real time where I'm doing the final update. And before we check on the last tank, let me show you how this fancy tiger shrimp doing in my new setup. Okay, this is a quick update on the shrimp. They're doing alright here in the new setup. The babies have grown a bit since then and now we can see their patterns. All of them look like their parents, and we also have some galaxy tigers, our bonus shrimp. I can't show you the full setup yet, but you're gonna see it in my future videos. And now guys, let's move on to our last tank with fancy tigers and do the final update. And take a look at the shrimp tank guys, it's doing fantastic. The shrimp colony has doubled if not tripled in size. Both flame and hookah mosses have grown a lot, and now we have a beautiful moss fence at the back of the tank. The shrimp never stop breeding and this tank becoming a little bit crowded now, and because I don't like to sell my shrimp, I'm thinking of moving all the juveniles into the new tank, creating another colony of this beautiful shrimp, and at the same time giving the shrimp in this tank more space to breed. I like this shallow UGF box, the water flow has always been good and it's never clogged. I think this shape of UGF box works a little bit better than the standard one from my experience. I've noticed that some of the shrimp in this tank has metallic color. Just look at this female, for example, she is really gorgeous. This is a rare mutation of a tiger galaxy shrimp, and I might try to breed them in a separate tank. It would be cool to have a colony of metallic shrimp like that. I know guys, this time we didn't have much luck with my other two tanks, but at least we have a great result with this one. Shrimp keeping is a challenging hobby and sometimes things might not go your way, but I'd like to share my results with you whether I have success or failure. My only advice to you guys is never give up, and if you fail, just try it again. You will get some knowledge and improve over time, and if you keep trying, I'm sure that one day you'll become a master breeder. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to support me, you know what to do. Just watch another video, comment, like, stuff like that. Bye bye.